Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about the one and only XCN. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, right? The volume has been fairly low on XCN, right? This is something I want to talk about because this is actually something very, very important. We can see that the volume in the last 20 hours has been around, or sorry, 24 hours has been roughly 20 million. Market cap at 491, and we are ranked 129 in the world. Now, the reason I want to discuss this, and I know it's technically weekend, so volumes levels get a little bit messed up, but you know, we can see that when XCN was pumping, practically when it started to pump, let's just say from July 10th, we were getting good volume, right? Good, consistent volume, 30, 40, even 50 and 90, 100 million volume days consistently, right? Sometimes, yeah, we slowed down a little bit, but overall, the volume has been really, really high, right? We see even $100 million volume days consistently, 50, 60, 70, yeah, sure, mid 30s again. We got some 40s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you get the point. Now, the reason why I point this out, ladies and gentlemen, is because you'll see that in recent times, generally, we have been getting pretty low volume, right? Like low, like mid to high teens to like 20, 21 million in volume. And the reason why I say this, because, ladies and gentlemen, I expect reversals very, very soon. I expect reversals to the upside, probably starting next week, if I'm being very, very honest. And look, I know some of you guys, like this coin, don't like this coin, but Turbo was in the exact same spot where for Turbo, mid 20s, the volume was fairly low. And this thing was kind of just ranging, going sideways, not doing much. But then we can see in the last couple of days, this thing has doubled to tripled its volume and it has been pumping, right? If we take in the last week, it has gone up 8%. Sorry, 21% in the last week. And I believe this same thing for Exian, ladies and gentlemen, is just around the corner. So even though I am not a financial advisor, I believe if you are looking for some of the cheapest Exian you know, prices you can get, it is going to be now. Okay. In general, it is going to be now and maybe the next few days, because ultimately, I do believe that we are starting to pump. Before we dive into the actual chart, you also have to realize, ladies and gentlemen, the dominance is absolutely dropping, right? The Bitcoin dominance is dropping. So, what does that mean? Altcoins get to see some of that money flooding in. So, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, there are multiple signs for why something like Exian will start pumping very, 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 and I mean very soon. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's just dive into the actual analysis itself. We can see that the last few months, even though they have closed as sell candles, they have been closing smaller and smaller each time. We can see that May was a sell candle, it was pretty decent. Then June, right, it was probably around half, maybe 60% of the May candle. And we can see in July, even though technically it ended as a sell, it is very, very small, right? You can't get much smaller than that. You can't technically just buy a little bit, but practically you can't get much smaller than that. And we can see that even when we compare the last 3 months to the 1 month that pumped up, we can see that that month that we did pump up, it's still what, like still 50% not covered by the selling pressure, right? We still haven't even reached a 50% retracement in terms of the candle closes. So that means that the buying pressure is much, much better, because even though we've been selling off the last few months very, very slowly, the selling pressure is not that high. It's more accumulation than actual selling pressure. So I believe, there's a high probability, especially next week, that we will start seeing a resurgence in price. Okay. And I stand on that, and I stand on that, and I do believe that is going to be the case. You can see that we have been roughly just accumulating, kind of going sideways and diagonally, in the last week or so. we haven't really done anything special. We've just been ranging from 0.0138 to pretty much 0.0145, right? And that's been pretty much since the beginning of August. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do expect some type of pump to be happening very, very soon. Okay, I really, really do. If we do see a little dip, it's going to be by what, like 2 or 3%, possibly going back down here before we see a nice rally. Now, I know, ladies and gentlemen, we also did talk about the weekly candles a lot. And the reality is, even though we want to see a close above 0.0144, I do believe, it is still technically okay if we just, as long as we close above the 0.014. And I do believe the context of this candle is that it's going to be a doji, which is a very, very reversal type of candle, right? And if you see a reversal type of candle on the weekly, I mean, that's a very, very good indication, ladies and gentlemen, okay? A weekly reversal candle is something you must respect, especially that we've seen the previous context. So I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, XTN is going to start preparing for a rally to the upside. And very, very soon, most likely, we will see an expansion to the upside, right? The low volume suggests it. The technical analysis suggests it. Bitcoin dominance suggests it. So for me, I am super, super optimistic about this project. I will be looking to pretty much entering a position from here and to see, how things go. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'm super, super stoked about this project. I know some people have their doubts. Some people compare it to Zbeck. And listen, man, each project is going to do its own thing. Now, I will say, I do think Zbeck is a little bit better in my opinion. I think there's going to be a lot more innovation around that. But, it's also scary to put your eggs in one basket, right? It is scary to put your eggs in one basket. And if you hold multiple coins and one of them's Exian, maybe one of them is Zbeck, maybe one is this and this and this, you're looking good, right? As long as you hold Exian, I think you will be getting very, very solid gains. I know everyone has a different target, but ladies and gentlemen, I do believe, at the bare minimum, even just in pure technical analysis standpoint, we should be hitting probably this order block up here, which would mean at the bare minimum, we would be roughly looking at, see, something like this, more or less, roughly a 10 to 12x at the bare minimum. Now, it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, but a 10x is only practically 5 billion market cap. 5 billion market cap's respectable, but when we talk about the craziest of crazy at times on crypto, ladies and gentlemen, 5 billion market cap is not that much. But yeah, that is ultimately it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.